some of you may feel like God is speaking to you clearly. Some of you say, I had this feeling. You know, we all hear different things in different ways, and I think they're all good. Well, we have, and John, you mentioned that our scriptures, right? This is the best way to be in conversation with God and to listen to God. And to me, it depends if I treat this as a historical book, right, where we have old dates and, you know, then there's less conversation. But if I really think of it as a living document and something that's breathing, and then you really feel that you are having a discussion with God. And, you know, you might be reading the same passage 100 times, and then the next time you read it, then something happens and you hear something completely different. And that's the beauty of this. And it just means that the Bible is inspired, right? God is always speaking to us. And so the more we think about it this way, the better, you know, the closer to God we might get. In John 15:15, Jesus says, I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I've heard from my Father. So that friendship, right, that shows that conversation, that shows that we're in it together. So I have a little practice. One of the things that we get to do is, and I think Lori does this in her class, the Lectio Divina, is to really slow down a passage when you're reading it. And that's not easy to do, or reading it a few times over and really listening how a passage speaks to you. But one of the practices also, if you might have a hard time to feel closer to God, is to change verses. And let's see. So read this verse with me, okay? Let's all read together. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. And now what I would like for you to do is read this again, but every word that's underlined, replace it with your own name and with a different pronoun for you, okay? So let's all read it together and change our names there. Here we go. Geneviève hears my voice. I know her, and she follows me, right? And so, or I would say, and I follow him. So here's another one we can try. Let's all read this one. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with him, and he with me. Now let's try this again and put your own name and your own pronoun there. Here we go. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If Geneviève hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with her, and he with me. Does that feel different a little bit? Right? So if you try reading the Bible, and when you feel like something doesn't speak to you as much, change the names. I think we're allowed to do that. Just do a little tweaking and see if it speaks to you a little bit differently, right? One thing I've noticed, Lori, I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, but sometimes, and I have like a handful of sermons given, so I don't have a whole lot of experience, but when I've given a sermon and I've had a conversation with someone about it the next day, I often hear people tell me, oh, you know, when you said this, that spoke to me, and they repeat what I said, and I think, that's not actually what I said exactly. But I don't know if that's happened to you, but that makes me feel that this is what they needed to hear. Even though it was not quite the words that were said, they hear something, people hear what they need to hear, and that's God speaking through sermons. So, yeah, maybe I need to be a little more clear, but I think that's an interesting thing. So, one practice that some people are really wonderful and patient with. So the question is, okay, this is me and my slide. Don't do this often. It's contemplative listening, right? It's to be listening without really a purpose. So you might sit down and just think of a word. You can think of grace. You can think of mercy. You can think of peace, of Jesus, or yes. And being in a space with that word for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, and just really, instead of thinking of a passage, just pick a word that means a lot to you and see how God speaks to you through one word, and just feeling that, how it transforms your thinking. And of course, your brain will wander, but you just keep bringing your brain back to the word and how that speaks to you. I think that's one of the ways to feel closer to God. Eugene Peterson, I don't know if anybody has read this book, Answering God. He loves to use the Psalms as a tool for prayer. And he says, the Psalms are acts of obedience, answering the God who has addressed us. God's words precedes these words. These prayers don't seek God. They respond to the God who seeks us. And so anyways, I encourage you to try one of those practices. Listening to God in nature, again, something that he said is comprehension of the invisible begins in the visible. Praying to God begins by looking at a tree. The deepest relationship of which we are capable has its origin in the everyday experience of taking a good look at what is in everybody's backyard. We're not launched into the life of prayer by making ourselves more heavenly, but by immersing ourselves in the earthy, not by formulating abstractions such as goodness, beauty, or even God, but by attending to trees, to tree toads, to mountains, mosquitoes, right? Go find yourself a tree and sit in front of it and look at it long enough and thoughtfully. So prayer begins not with what we don't see, but what we do see. Well, a lot of you have mentioned listening to God in music. And of course, that resonates with me a lot. That's how I found God. And I discovered through Mingy a few years ago this type of service. I don't know if you're familiar with it, a type of worship called Teze. Any of you familiar with this? Yeah, okay, a lot of you. So Teze is a little village community in France where a lot of people do a pilgrimage to stay there for a week, notably the young people. And it's just a worship of singing, a lot of repetitive singing that's just very, very moving. And when it becomes boring, it's because you repeat the same thing over and over, it's usually because it's working. So the Spirit moves through that music. So I've asked Matt to play one of the Teze songs, and it's "O Lord, Hear My Prayer," and see how it moves you. That's the beauty of this kind of music. It just repeats and repeats and repeats, and then different instruments come in. But it's just a type of worship that's really great for finding time with God. How many of you have the app Pray As You Go? Oh, yes. Okay, you all need to download this app. If it's just a wonderful. You can spend, it's about 10 minutes long every day. You have scriptures read, and then music every day is different. You'll have contemporary, you have very eclectic, all kinds of things. And it's just a wonderful way to listen to God in a new way. I personally, because I get the floors, I get to sell what I love. I love Bach's music. Johann Sebastian Bach, to me, is the closest to God you can ever get by listening to his music. He wrote so much for the church. He wrote 200 cantatas, which are just scriptures put to music. So every week there was a new piece of music written by him, and they're very, very difficult. There's a little church in Boston, Emmanuel Church, who does them every week, which is very unique. I love to listen to the B minor Mass in this time of year, the Magnificat around Christmas. And I thought I would let you in on one of little pieces that I love. It's from Random Cantata 105, and it was for the 9th Sunday after Trinity, so we're not in the right time period. But the words are, how they quiver and waver the thoughts of sinners. It's in German, but music is international, so just listen and enjoy. It goes on and on. Of course, I would love to hear the whole thing. Thank you for letting me indulge in the things I love. But even if you're not into this kind of music, try it. It's so beautiful, so beautifully written. I don't know what Bach did. He had 20 kids somehow and wrote, so maybe that was the thing to do, to go write some music. But thank you for, and so that leads me to what I would like for you to talk about. See if you can group yourself in groups of 6 or less, and see if you can talk a little bit about these things. First of all, of course, introduce yourselves, and think about sounds, not just music, but what sounds do you hear that remind you of God? Is it maybe a waterfall, or is it maybe a child's laughter or something? And also just talk about music. A lot of you mentioned music, so what are the kinds of music that really bring you closer to God? So go ahead and gather in little groups of 6. If you've done this class before, you know what to do. You can help the newbies, and see if you can take a few minutes to have some conversation. Don't be shy. Don't be shy.